Hey guys, welcome back to the JPM Performance channel. This is our post runoffs shop tour. First one since we went to Indianapolis. And probably wondering why I'm out here behind the shop. You don't really see the shop yet, but this is kind of where my my runoff started. I will say this before we start our little shop tour today. This was the most interesting and stressful runoffs I've ever been to, and let's just get into it. So the last RV I had was a Jayco Seneca. Drove that thing for 60,000 miles, coast to coast. I was out at the runoffs at VIR, and obviously I went all the way out to Sonoma. So been all over the country, 60,000 miles. Jamie and I decided it's time to get a different RV. So we got a Class A. You know, our kids are older now, and we don't really need something to sleep a bunch of people. So we got a Class A, and of course, on the way to the runoffs this year, a semi clipped me, tore this mirror completely off, pushed the side. This is a little camera for when you're doing turn signals. Got into the door, so didn't make it 500 miles. And for those of you that were coming from the west to the east, there was a really bad intersection coming out of St. Louis where 270 meets 70, getting back to I-70 on the east side of St. Louis. And there was a really quick merge, and it just, it was at night, and they didn't see me, and I got clipped. So after that, I was like, oh, this is a great way to start the runoffs. Boy, this is gonna be fantastic. So made it to the runoffs, no problem. Actually didn't do any test days. I've been to Indy before, vintage racing, and of course the 2017 runoffs as well. So I just helped out. We did some dynoing with customers and got going. So I kind of used my first day of qualifying as my test day. And so went well. Matt was on the pole. I was about a half second back. No problems. Put some sticker tires on for the second day and put it up on the pole. Felt really good. But get into tech, and a certain tech inspector is holding an intake manifold that looks, to my eye, almost identical as the one that's on my car, but they're not identical, and I did not know this because I was using the intake manifold that came on my car when I bought it. And this particular tech inspector is the gentleman that built my car and installed this intake manifold and brought an alternate manifold to the runoff. So let's get into exactly what happened with the BMW Z3 intake manifolds. So this is the manifold that I've been running. It's the manifold that came on the car when I bought it. It came with an adapter plate because you're allowed, and I've learned a lot over the last week, but you're allowed a 325 manual throttle body that you can then use a cable with, because Z3s came with drive-by-wire. Okay, so he presented an intake manifold that looked like this. So I'm looking at them and I'm thinking to myself, what's the difference? So, and of course, here's the thing. He knew what the difference was. He knew exactly what was going on here. This was a deliberate attack at the runoffs. I get it. I've seen it before. I grew up in this club. Guys used to backstab each other in the 80s and 90s all the time. You know, my dad dealt with this kind of stuff all the time. So here's the big difference. The intake manifold, this is the upper plenum right here. This one measures 2 inches, let's call it 865. This one, as you can see, is quite a bit narrower right here on this plenum. 2 inches 565, so it's like 300 thousandths. So yeah, that's definitely a difference, and obviously you can see it here. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. So he says, well, yeah, I pulled this off of a Z3. I'm like, you did? Well, how can you prove that? I mean, where did this manifold come from? Well, this is the one that you're supposed to be running. I'm like, well, this is the one that came on the car, you know, that you put on this car. And he says to me, you can't prove that. So at that point, I knew exactly what was going on. We were into a full-blown witch hunt. I get it. I get it, man. I grew up around full prep production racing. Guys would show up at the runoffs, and their whole goal was to screw you. And they generally do it later in the week, after you've qualified, so there's nothing you can do. So, there are no part numbers on these intake manifolds, neither one of them. So I still don't quite understand exactly how they determined that I was running the wrong one. So here's the kicker. In a Z3, you are allowed an adapter plate. There are two different adapter plates. There is one that adapts the same throttle body to this manifold. If you go onto Turner Motorsports website, it's for a 2.5 and a 3 liter E46. And so, I mean, if you guys can understand all of the BMW stuff, you're probably better than me, because it's all kind of confusing. But that's what this one is, and they do have good pictures on the Turner Motorsports website. So this one supposedly adapts the same throttle body to a 2.8 intake manifold. But these were also in 528i's, 325s, and Z3 2.8. So it's kind of funny. So I don't know when this adapter plate was put onto the spec line for the Z3. And I don't know who did it. I'm not going to speculate who did that, because I have no clue. But this adapter plate is the correct adapter plate. This is not the correct adapter plate. So what's the difference? The bolt patterns. This one will not go on here. This one will not go on here. Right? Okay, I get it. So apparently Tech sent something up to the Court of Appeals, and I got a text on Friday afternoon. Mind you, fortunately my race isn't until Sunday. But all of a sudden, I'm concerned that I don't have the correct intake manifold on this car, which is somewhat blowing my mind. Now let's go over a couple of things here, which is kind of interesting. Two adapter plates. This is the one that fits this manifold, which is supposed to be the non-compliant manifold. This is straight from Turner. It measures 2 inches 643 thousandths. That, I mean, this is a dial caliper. This is not the most precise thing, but I've got it right about there. 2 inch 643. Here's the legal one. For legal whatever. This is the one that fits this intake manifold. Two inches 698 thousandths. Pretty much 50 thousandths larger than this, right? Now, does it make a difference? I don't know, because we also have restrictor plates in these cars as well. So I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, we're gonna make this happen. So I begged Turner Motorsports to open up on Saturday, and my really good friend Eric Stevie, shout out to Eric, drove the 10-hour round trip. He left at 2 a.m. Saturday morning. This is the week of the runoffs races, weekend of the runoffs races. Left at 2 a.m. and got back to the track about 2 p.m., you know, with the turnaround, meeting the people. In the meantime, here's my second shout out. John Steflik and I have already been doing research, trying to figure out where this intake manifold comes from, because it's not just Z3s. It comes on a number of different cars. Fortunately, in Indianapolis, they still have what's called pick and pull, which means you can go with your own tools and you can remove parts and they will charge you for whatever it is you buy. So we went to the first pick and pull and we found a 528i, and sure enough, it had this exact perfect manifold, but we needed two. Why did we need two? Because John Brackey's car, which is the ex-Kevin Lee car, which also had the same engine builder as my car, had the wrong intake manifold on it as well. Go figure. So we're on the search for two of these intake manifolds. They had two adapter plates. Eric's going to get those. Sure enough, there were two cars almost across from each other that had these manifolds on them. So we get the manifolds off, get back to the track. Boom, boom, boom. Got everything cleaned up. Got both cars running. So earlier in the week, John we were fighting an electrical problem in his car, which turned out to be a ridiculous thing. It was just a relay. Get out on track, it would cut out and spit and sputter and misfire. So we finally found that. So we went to the dyno earlier in the week. There was a really nice DynoJet 224 remote dyno at the Runoffs. So we had already run John's car on this dyno. And everybody can look back if you'd like. You can go on to SCCA's live typing. You can see the trap speeds. Depending on if you were in the draft, it was 2 or 3 mile an hour difference. So I don't know if these manifolds are going to change the tune. I don't know if they're going to change the horsepower. So we tossed them on, threw them on the dyno. Zero change in power or tune. Why is that probably? Well, okay, we've got this little plenum difference here, right? But it's still a large plenum that goes front to back all the way across. They both have it. If you look inside, they're identical on the insides. If we start measuring a few things, I'm going to measure right here by this boss. This is the one I was running. 2 inches, 490 thousandths. Here's the one we ran in the race. 2 inches, 490 thousandths. The main runners going into the motor will measure right here past this boss here. One inch, 571 thousandths. Same spot. One inch, 568 thousandths. 3 thousandths off. That could just be me. Anyway, 3 thousandths is nothing. Let's flip them over. Port shapes and sizes. Let's measure right in the middle. 1 inch, 793. Second one down. One inch, about 90. So 3 thousandths there is. So I'll tell you what's going on. Check this out. These junkyard intake manifolds, obviously we didn't have a great way to clean them. So I'm just going to rub my finger inside these ports. You can see what I put through my engine during that Runoffs race, because this intake manifold needs to be sonic cleaned. This one obviously I had cleaned before I've been using it, and so it's nice and clean, as you can see. Distance, let's go this way, make sure these are the same. .944 ish. Looks like about 940. It's kind of hard with all of this nastiness inside here. Hopefully you can zoom in on that. It's about 940. Port sizes are the same, runners are the same. The main runners coming from the main plenum up into the upper plenum, these are the same. There was no horsepower difference. And if you look at the track speeds, like I said, during the week and during the race, you'll see that they are identical. So, why am I posting this today? I'm posting this so that anybody that's watching can understand that I'm not trying to be non-compliant. This is the intake manifold that came on my car, and this is the adapter that came with it. Now, I will say this. Shame on me for not inspecting this, because I found a few non-compliant issues on this car, mainly in the engine that came with the car. This is part of the engine. I should have done the research to be sure that the car had the correct adapter plate on it. I don't know why I didn't. You know, this car's been through tech at the Runoffs a couple of times, and the previous owner assured me that everything was fine. And like I said, the previous owner's not the one that did the engine work on this car. So I just want to kind of clear the air a little bit so that you guys understand where I'm coming from. You know, I've got too many customers running at the Runoffs to be non-compliant myself, much less building non-compliant motors, cars, or whatever. So let's continue our shop tour, but I thought you might be interested in exactly what was going on and exactly what I had to go through at the Runoffs this year. So it was a stressful time, but we did overcome. So any of you that were paying any attention through the week know that I ended up qualifying on the pole and led every lap in changing conditions. So we pulled it off, guys. It was quite the week. So there's one more thing I want to talk about here. And I kind of spoke on it over there looking at the intake manifolds. This is the kind of stuff that people did back in the 80s and 90s. And I can remember people in the middle of the night sneaking out and taking pictures of people's cars underneath. I can remember vindictive protests midweek during qualifying. I can remember all sorts of this kind of stuff that's going on, and I really think that we're better these days than that, you know. Limited prep production racing has been awesome for our classes. There's really no other place I'd like to race. And I just think that we need to, here's my suggestion. If you feel like one of your competitors has a non-compliant piece on his car, call him up. Send him an email. If you see him at the track, go up to him. I mean, I know we're living in the world of social media where we've got keyboard jockeys all over the internet that want to speculate all sorts of things. But we can all be better people, right? I mean, we can all treat each other better than this. And, you know, our goal should be compliant race cars. I know it's my goal, and if I had a competitor that I felt may or may not have a compliant piece on his car, I'll let him know. And I've done that many times in the past. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but at least we're opening up a discussion about it, right? So that's kind of my suggestion. You know, let's treat everybody, and this is something that everybody can learn just in general in this world. Treat people the way you want to be treated. You know, there's no good reason to be, you know, a dick. There's just no good reason for it. Life's too short. You'll live longer if you're a better person, believe me. So let's continue on with the shop tour. All right, now that all that's over with, we are back from the Runoffs. Brought back a couple of engines, one for David Bednar's. We had ourselves a bit of a failure. And it happens, you know, these are racing engines. So this one's going to need to come apart. And then the other one over here is Charlie Campbell's spare engine. So we're going to do a refresh on that. Also had Wade McBride drop off his Miata for an engine rebuild, transmission rebuild, and as most people could see at the runoffs, the big brake kit is working. We were looking at some data, and it is really working, man. I think in a Miata, a 1.6 Miata, you know, they came with really small brakes, and they are good brakes. And yes, you do have to add some weight to, you know, to put this big brake kit on, but I think it's worth it. So big kudos to Rick. So during the runoffs week, Rick never really had clean laps. He was continuously having trouble with lap traffic or other competitors that were trying to race. Never really got a great qualifying lap in. Qualified back, you know, way further back than we were planning on, 12th or 13th, I think. But ended up 4th on the track in changing conditions, and then unfortunately Mason was penalized a few spots for contact with another competitor or two, and Rick ended up 3rd. So we have a 3rd place for the Integra. So looking really good. So for those of you that don't know, it was a wet track in F production, and it was a drying track. So there were very, very few that went out on slicks. I think there were 2 or 3. You can see that Eric was out on rains, and you can see that Rick was out on rains. And these rain tires are now completely destroyed. The track dried out, and after the full course caution, Cliff Ira was able to move into the lead and essentially drive away. Mason actually did a phenomenal job. Had a spin in the first turn at the start, worked his way back through, unfortunately had some contact, so they penalized him, but Mason was 2nd on the track. And let me tell you, the contact, while it was unfortunate, is not a reflection of how he made it back to 2nd place. I mean, he drove a fantastic race, was on a set of grooved slicks, which was probably the way to go, and unfortunately lost his 2nd place finish because of that. So that was really a shame. But you know, Cliff winning in the Del Sol, obviously, for any of you that have been following, you know, these shop tours for the last year, know that we built that car basically during the COVID lockdown stuff, and finished it last winter, and kind of it all came to fruition. So Cliff drove a very smart and patient race, ended up pulling it off. So JPM engines, 1st in E production, 1st in F production, 2nd in F production on the track, as well as the Integra in 4th, which ended up 3rd. Charlie Campbell was 6th, ended up 5th. You know, so lots of good customers. It was great to see everybody. We had a really good week, and next week you will see that this car will be jacked up, and preparations for the 2022 season will be started. So I probably said this last year, but I'll say it again. Don't let your race car sit for 3 months after the runoffs. Just do one thing every day. Jack it up one day. Pull the wheels off the next day. Clean the wheels the day after that. You know, pull some body work the day after that. Clean it the day after. I mean, just, if you do just, honestly, 15 minutes a day, if you just do something every day, when January, February, March rolls around and you want to go racing again, you're going to be ready. So in the meantime, I've got engines to build, cars to build, lots more coming. There's never time to celebrate too much because we always have lots going on. So hope you guys got the opportunity to watch some of the races. If you didn't, they will be back on demand. And actually, you can go to the live timing. If you go to SCCA.com /live, and you go to the session that you want to watch, down at the bottom there will be a YouTube video of the entire day, and you just have to fast forward and you can watch all the races. And you can watch the F production race, E production, any race you want to watch. So they're all on there. And as always, they did a fantastic job of the broadcast. And there will be a bunch of JPM Performance videos coming shortly, including my in-car video with, hopefully, if it worked, front view, rear view, foot cam of the race, potentially some of the qualifying, as well as paddock tours, grid tours, all sorts of good stuff. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. I know this is a long one today, guys, but I wanted to explain a few things while I had the opportunity. As always, if you have any questions, hit me up down below, and thanks for watching. And if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe, and I'm going to keep these videos coming. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.